Well, hello folks, I'm LA Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective, each time asking ourselves just one question: what happened today? What might it tell us about the coming days? I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel LA Little. If you subscribe there, then anytime content is pushed, you'll be notified. As far as what happened today, it was a down day. We thought it would be that way last night, of course, because we saw the after-hours action in Microsoft and in Apple in particular, and it was, but you know, it turned out not to be nearly as bad as I thought it would be. And of course, what I'm talking about here is that the Russell actually finished positive, even though, you know, this quote service can't seem to get it right on the Russell for whatever reason. Russell was up today and finished, I think it was up about 0.2%, if I remember right. NASDAQ, the big loser, in particular the NDX, down 1%. NASDAQ almost 0.75%. Elsewhere, mixed. You had oil getting really sold off again today, 3%. Big losses there. Gold, silver, losses there, but those actually look like they're ready to turn, and I'll show you that in a second. So if we move over, take a look at the NDX, and on the NDX what we have is a pullback, right? And that's what we thought we'd get today. The NDX wasn't showing us that. It was an inside day yesterday. What was showing us was other indexes that were pulling back and looked like they'd continue. This one pulls back into the gap, doesn't quite fill it, almost fills it. That was that huge spike up off of Google last week. And if we look at the characteristic here, volume expands today. Of course, Apple doing a lot of that volume. But look at the type of candle you got. You opened basically on the low, shot up, came back, just settled in the middle. So that's, you know, from a perspective of a pullback, that's not a bad looking candle on a pullback. The NASDAQ actually looks better. If we look at it, you got the same sort of scenario, and the reason it looks better is the NASDAQ actually came back in to do the retest regen. So if we look at this prior swing point high, we look at the volume coming into it expanding, right? This was your breakout bar here, so volume over that one, and volume into the bar itself is heavier. But where did it close? It closed outside that bar. And of course, if you close outside the bar, then you're successfully defending it. And that's the first time back you close over the highs. And that is, you know, a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And that's the NASDAQ. So the two indexes that were going to get hit the worst actually closed okay. If we look at the S&P 500 itself, we had some volume expansion here as well. This one comes back, expands volume, comes into the area that you should see the first set of buyers. They did come in. Where's the real support going to be? Well, that real support is actually going to be a little deeper, and it's going to be this breakdown bar's top and the break over it. That's back about 2100. So you got down to 2109. You got pretty close to it. Came into first support, found buyers. I don't know that that's the end of this move to the downside. I suspect it's the end of the move to the downside for different reasons on this particular day. In other words, I am expecting some sort of a push back up tomorrow, and that push back up is going to be the bounce that you have to watch, because it's the bounce that you always want to see after a first pullback to see how it behaves, right? If it can get back up to the top, challenge the top, especially get over the top, you know, then you have your ABCD structure. And believe me, if this is the ABCD structure and this is the end of the pullback, then that would be a heck of an ABCD structure to the upside if it breaks topside. So far, actually so good. So far, so good on the pullback. Now let's look at the Russell, because the Russell was the one we were going to watch today to see how it behaved, because it was actually coming into something of significance. The bar it was coming into was the high volume, wide price spread bar off the lows. So you have a high volume low here. If you can get into that bar and stay into it, right, that increases your probabilities of getting to the bottom tremendously. In this particular case, what does it do? It comes into that on the open. They buy it immediately. They close almost at the highs. A complete reversal off that test. That's a very positive sign. You're going to see this one actually try to run higher. Now, Is this that long-awaited rotation where something else actually steps up and tries to work its way higher, take over the baton, so to speak? If it is, that's a good sign. That would take it right to the highs, right, on this little pullback ABCD structure to the top side. We'll know that if it makes its move here and does the break. Tomorrow we should see some follow-through. The volume coming into that test was a lot lighter. That was a good test, solid test, back the other way. That's the index right now that's given us the signal tonight, suggesting that in fact we are going to see a bounce tomorrow. If we move over to the world indexes, and we'll do that as soon as I come back.
If you are serious about trading, TA Today's Tools is the perfect service to help you reach your trading goals. Go to our homepage and click Use Our Tools. Here you will find an overview of this amazing service we offer to our clients. One of the tools you will have access to is the TA Today charts. These charts visually map all the neoclassical concepts that LA writes and teaches about, and is the perfect charting service for neoclassical traders. Learn the trend of a stock you're interested in and see this stock on all 3 time frames. To get started with a free 2-week trial, go to our homepage, click Use Our Tools, and then click the free trial button.
So as we come back here and take a look at the world indexes, I'm going to start with the Sensex over in India, and the reason for it is this one's at a critical point. You know, you've had a nice big run up just like we just did, and then you get the spike down, right, bought. You don't get the full extension. You get another ABCD structure inside of it, still no full extension here. This extension, if it's going to extend, is up into there somewhere. And now you're getting the pullback again, so you have like 3 nested ABCD structures to try to take this thing higher. That's a pretty powerful move. Now what it's going into, for all my friends over in India, is what it's going into is a significant bar, and that is this particular bar, and that's from, let's see what the date is on this. That's from April 20th. So you're coming into the April 20th bar. The high this week so far, 28,544. That number is 28,539. So you've gone in, you've tested it, you don't have the volume, you got to get over it. In other words, by the end of the week, you want to see this thing break out and get over this, and those ABCD structures start to complete. If they don't, this thing's going to come back. Right, so this is the test in India, and it's taking place right now. If you get over it, you can go to the highs again, or actually you can go to this next set of highs, which is, looks like about 29,270. So that's the number in India. India, bring it up because you know, it's not moving the world, but it's certainly moving itself, and right now it's at a critical point. Now if you want to look at the opposite case, you have Brazil. Brazil's coming back, swing point low there, 51,129. You're doing 59.15 as of today. You're going to have the volume. You're breaking it, but it's coming into the big bar, or at least it's going to try to come into the big bar. That top is 49,657. That looks to be where it's heading, and it's probably not going to have the volume. So Brazil, yeah, it's stair-stepping back down, but it's probably going to come into that big bar there, and that's probably going to be the buy on Brazil. Elsewhere, if we go and look at Europe, France, a little pullback, nothing bad, actually looks pretty good. If you look at the DAX, it's the same thing, looks pretty good on the DAX. And then if you look at Toronto, you actually have a test of the low with slightly more volume on the daily. That's going to try to test it again tomorrow. And if you come to the weekly, you're testing into this big bar and you're into it. You really want to see, you know, friends up in Canada, you really want to see this thing turn, get over it, stay over it for the week, which would give you some sort of a bounce to the upside, and you'd have a successful test on those lows. Moving over to Hong Kong, just a little pullback, and what they're really doing over here is it's Shanghai. Shanghai is nestled right underneath that B point of the ABCD structure on the upside. They keep pressing and pressing 3-4 days in a row now. If they don't get over it tonight, I suspect Friday you're going to come back down. So that's kind of the setup there. So I mentioned Apple and Apple and Microsoft at the top of the show, knowing that they were going to sell off. Well, Apple opened on the lows, straight up all day. This tells you there's value buyers coming at this price, and that's a good thing, because if value buyers, they're not going to like try to flip this thing. They're going to buy it and they're going to hold on to it. So they saw it as a buying opportunity to get into Apple or to increase their shares in Apple. Big volume. If you look at it on the weekly, it's going to have volume as it's testing. It's testing into this big bar. Actually didn't quite get to it. 120 was the number there. They opened it about 121, or actually 122. So you're not going to get that test. That's going to hold for now. It's going to have more volume by the end of the week and probably test down there again before it's over. Now Microsoft is a different story. It opened on the lows, went all the way back to trade almost to the highs, of the yesterday, actually slightly down on the day, and then reversed. So Microsoft, different story. That one's going to struggle. Is going to struggle for a while. If we look at the sectors now, XLK, of course, was hit as a result of this. And if you look at the XLK, you'd had that huge run higher. You spiked down. It's coming back to an area that you'd think you'd get support anywhere here, 42 to 41.85. If it can't hold there, then that'd be a different story and that'd be more concerning. But it already had a huge spike straight up, and now it's simply coming back down. The places that were interesting today is the places that have been interesting, and that is like for on the strength side, IBB holds. It was trying to fail this morning. It holds. If we look on the weakness side, the semiconductors trade off of Microsoft and Apple trade down, but they had less volume and they almost held the lows. They're probably going to get over it tomorrow, as they did a hammer tonight. And if you look at them on a weekly, they're testing these lows. They're going to have more volume here, but they're also testing into this big bar from October 27th last year. That looks like it's going to hold, and I think these semiconductors are finally going to flip around and get a bounce. So more bounce, in areas that haven't been able to get any bounce so far. Another area that continues to show extreme strength is the financials. Of course, that's a big weighting in the S&P, and that's why the S&P is holding as well as it is. And then you saw money running back into other sectors that have done well, like consumer discretionary, and I think the durables held up pretty well as well tonight. So strength in the same areas. You got a couple more trying to join in, like small caps. And then you got weakness in the areas that you've had weakness. I didn't show energy down, making new lows. The basic materials making new lows. The industrial selling off farther off of yesterday's disasters. And it's a mixed market. You got some going up, you got some going down. Now you have technology going down, at least right now. They'll have to arrest that and make it go higher if this whole market can go higher, in particular the S&Ps, because that's a large piece of what was driving it. Finally, if we turn our attention to the OX markets, what we had there was we simply had gold backing off a little bit, the FXE get a little stronger, but the real story over here happens to be in the gold and silver market. Gold makes a new low, opens on the lows, closes at the highs, has been fairly washed out. If you look at it on the weekly, remember we had a break here. You could expect 2 to 3 bars to the downside. That's what it's been doing. But the big story is not in the metal, it's in the miners. Underneath, back over, extended move. That's probably a 2 bar, given the you had a blow off bottom, and it's extended. In other words, if you take and draw a line and you look at it and say, okay, what does it look like? It's like this, and then all of a sudden you're doing this. You'd probably want it a little bit farther down, but that's underneath, and you have this huge blow off volume. These things are reversed. The test is going to be here. They're going to go test it tomorrow. Miners are going to try to turn, and after the bell, you actually had Newmont come out with earnings up about 1.5%, and this is like a tender box waiting on someone to throw a match on it. They've sold it off steadily now for a long time, and when you do something like that, all it takes is just one spark, and this thing could ignite on a huge short covering rally. And that's what it would be initially, a short covering rally, big bounce, and then you'd come back down again and do some more testing. You're not going to turn this around immediately, right? Something like this, it can come all the way back up and test these swing point lows, and probably will when it moves. But at the same time, this kind of a break, this kind of a move, even after your bounce, all you can expect is some sort of a retrace build out a range just like you did back here and try to get higher eventually. This went on for 6 months. You can expect that to continue. It's not going to stop. And finally, if we look at the oil market, oil collapsing now, coming all the way back to the lows on the first leg down. So oil probably displays more closely what I was just talking about with gold, in that you get the big spike down, right? Some sort of a move, you test, then you try to see if you can make it up, and maybe you roll over, maybe you don't. That's the case I'm talking about. But look how long it took. I mean, the first low was made, I think it was January. That's 7 months now. So you started breaking down in July. It was back here in July. You go to January, 6 months. 6 more months, you're just trying to get back up, right? And you roll back over, you're testing again. This is the sort of base building that has to take place before you can get any kind of sustained move to the upside. And it doesn't mean it's going to hold here. I mean, this could break and make new lows and continue down until, it is a commodity. At some point, it will find value, but it could be a lot lower than here still. So if we come back to the Russell, which is the one giving us the clues, what it's telling us tonight, and also what the European markets are telling us, is that this is going to try to bounce. It's going to try to bounce from this level. Test is going to be here on the bounce. Can it get back up and over? If so, it goes back to the highs. That would portend well for the markets. That's the next test, is the bounce, and if the bounce can succeed or not. If it doesn't, then you're going to see the S&P roll again. You're going to see the NASDAQ bounce and roll, and you're going to see further test on those bullish retest regens on the NDX and on the NASDAQ. NASDAQ will make it all the way to the lows of that swing point. NDX would come into the highs. That's it for tonight. Thanks for joining me. Have a great one. Take care. I'll see you next time.